Welcome back to this is going to be episode 49 of the PCC Podcast. Wild, right?
Yeah.
I feel like when was the last time I had you on here? It was
My intro.
episode 13, so it's been a while. But yeah, we've got Coach Abby here. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be
And
here.
yeah, you're actually the first duo episode since all the intros. So I'm pumped and I'm excited because I want to do a lot more of this with you and the coaches and just have it be more like a roundtable than just me talking at people the whole time.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about how to basically hack your motivation, create motivation on your own to see faster results. So I mean, just start with like where did this kind of idea for this topic come up for you?
Yeah. So I feel like obviously motivation is a floating term that we use a ton in the fitness industry, that we see a lot in client check-ins. I use myself like subconsciously, and I think like it boils down to two things. Like one, from a personal like view, motivation. I feel like something like we tell ourselves, especially like as fitness coaches, like, "Ugh, why am I not doing this? Like I'm supposed to have motivation to do this." Like I think I have those thoughts a lot. And then also on the other side of things, like motivation is brought up in probably every other client check-in. Like I see that buzzword somewhere in a check-in.
Yeah.
And it's just I feel like I'm having the same conversation. I've been using the same response like probably the past month with my clients, and I'm like, let's just hash this out in a podcast episode so I can just send this to them.
Perfect.
Yeah. So definitely from like a personal view, but also just from my clients too, like just getting a better understanding of what is motivation, how do you get it, and we'll kind of talk about like the loop. I guess I'll introduce it.
Yeah.
I'll give credit where credit's due. Jordan Syatt, we've been following him for forever, and I
Yeah.
think I remember seeing one of this post maybe like 2 years ago, and I saw it and I was like, dang, like that makes sense. And I have it like saved on my saved Instagram like posts. And Cody McBroom actually didn't just do, but I saw he had a podcast on it too. So I
And he made a
listened.
post on it too, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I
that's what
saw
made
it.
me go listen to it. And I was like, it was just like a good reminder. It's almost like we overcomplicate motivation. And so I'll kind of explain the loop. So there's this thing called, you can call it the motivation loop, the success loop, but basically it's motivation, action, and results. And it's, and a little loop with arrows. And most people think that it starts with motivation, then you're going to take action, and then you're going to get results, which is a very reasonable way of thinking. It's kind of how we're taught to think, like, I just need to get motivated, I need to go to the gym, and I need to achieve the body that I want, right? Like, we all have that thinking. And this kind of challenges it. It's like, where do you enter in? And if you're jumping in at motivation, right, you might not even make it to the last step. You might even not even get those results. So he challenges it with the success loop, that it starts with action. That's like the very first step where you need to jump into the loop. Then you're going to get results. And then you're going to be like, oh shit, nice. Then you're going to get motivation.
Yeah.
So it's not like the pattern, but it's like, where do you start the loop and where do you hop in? And I think that's a lot of times what we start to put pressure on ourselves. Like, once I'm motivated, I'll start. Like, once I'm motivated, I'll do this. And I think that's what our clients think. And I think it does lead to limiting like self beliefs. Like, you start to doubt yourself and doubt your willpower just because you don't have motivation, right? It's fleeting. So, a lot what I've been talking with my clients about is like, like where can you apply more action in your routine and in your life? And obviously, we can get into the weeds of that, but it does go into coaching and what we do here at PCC with taking action. So I guess like I'll explain it this way, like taking action first. Like I think that's the hardest way to enter. Like people think like, how do I even start? How do I even take action? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of our clients or a lot of our viewers, like it seems overwhelming. Like, I need to go to the gym 5 days a week. I need to eat healthy. I need to eat clean. And it's like all this action is so daunting. And I think what our job are as coaches and, to speak into our clients is like, action can be a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
Action can be a 30-minute workout. Like, and I think that's what our job is to help our clients view is like your action can look different for every person, but it's like how can we apply more action that's sustainable and it's going to look different for everyone. Um, but like breaking that barrier into that action piece is like the hardest part, but that's what's going to get you started.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll pause there.
Totally. I mean, I feel like too people feel like they have to start with motivation because of how much people talk about like you got to have your why. You got to be like really deeply connected to your why and then you'll start. And so I feel like there is actually a camp that basically preaches the opposite. And I don't know who's in that camp or how many people there are, but I feel like I've seen enough of that where it's like I see where this misconception comes from, right? Of I if I am in enough pain or I have a deep enough understanding of all the reasons that I want to do this, then I will start. And I think what ends up happening is we like do, 80 different journal exercises and then we're like less motivated than when we started because we're just realizing like, wow, things really suck right now. Where do I even start?
Yeah.
So I love that. And just making it easier to take action. Like, I think the biggest thing I took away from that was like just what is like the initiating action? Like it doesn't need to be all the things that we should do, quote unquote, but I think most people struggle to give themselves the permission to say that that's okay. Like to just do a 5-minute walk, to just because then it's like, oh, if I just do that, what's the point? Like it's not getting me anywhere, right? So then that's the narrative that comes from it. But yeah, so kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the action. Like how have you broken that down and like what have been the effects of that with your clients?
Yeah. I kind of like view it as like a bubble. Like we're on the outside of a bubble and it's like popping that bubble and like getting started is the hardest part. Um and so I think like seeing from from action to result to motivation, like I try to talk with my clients about like especially in the beginning phases, like what can we commit to? What can we commit to for the next 2 weeks? Whether it be meal photos, tracking food, a 30-minute walk, like 2 workouts a week or something like that. Like, and if someone's coming to us from a background of not doing that before, they're gonna get results, whether it's emotional, physical, weight loss, right? There's gonna be byproducts of it. And I think that those results, it shows them like, whoa, like that's all I did, but I got results. And
Yeah.
that's what like inspires the motivation, right? Like they kind of get that high feeling. Um, and it's the same thing for like people listening to this podcast or like, like this could motivate someone for 5 minutes, but it's not gonna like motivate someone to go change their life, right? Like, so it's all about like the action pinpoints. And so I think for my clients and like for myself too, it's like it really buckles down to like committing to one action. Like that's what I like try to tell my clients to start with. Like let's commit to one task, one thing. And that's what we do here at PCC. It's like one habit. Like how can we master this for a month? And then it becomes so routine to them that right, they get results from it, whether it's food, whether it's protein, whether it's working out, right? Like they're gaining positive like effects from this one action, and that's going to continue that cycle of I'm motivated and now really like just taking action. I think it comes down to like doing it when you don't want to do it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest like mental barrier to get over. And I think that's the difference between motivation, obviously, and action. It's like
Yeah.
motivation, I mean, we could probably have it for 10% of our life. Like, is that going to get us what we want? No, it's,
Yeah.
it's coming and it's going. And action is committing to whatever your action is and doing it day in and day out, whether you want to or not. And that produces that feeling of like not doing it, like feels worse than doing it. So
Yeah. And ironically, you become more motivated as a result. But
I know it's a sick loop.
yeah, but you know what that made me think of? It really like made me question like what even is the definition of motivation because let me look it up.
I really don't.
Definition. Because it's like the way you put it was so well put. It was you said when you take the action, you see the results from it. You're like, I can do just that and see results. What that does is it's empowering. It's
Yeah.
like my actions lead to something. And I think we are in an industry and a time where there's so much shit that doesn't lead to anything, that doesn't work because it's crap,
Yeah.
that we almost like start to build this narrative that like I've done all these things and it hasn't worked, that it's like disempowering, and then we're less motivated. And
Yeah.
so it's literally the opposite of that, but it's like putting their power back in their hands. So it just gave me like a new insight on motivation, just even in this conversation. So the definition is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way, the general desire or willingness of someone to do something. So,
Hmm.
pretty standard, but the reasons one has for acting, I think the biggest reason that you pointed out is like because it actually takes me somewhere,
Yeah.
and
Right.
like breaking that belief that like my efforts are in vain or my efforts won't get me anywhere. I think
Yeah.
once we realize that that's not true, then we're ultimately more motivated to change.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that's where like the failure, not failure, but like, yeah, I mean, typically the failure comes in if someone starts with motivation, right? Like a lot of times it's not going to lead to anything because we can't rely on that. And so I think that's where people get discouraged, especially like in this industry or maybe in the past, like they've relied on like, right, that willpower, that motivation just to do
Mm-hmm.
that cleanse, do that diet. And they're not motivated for however long that ends up being. And so I think they have to enter back into, that motivation cycle. And now it's like just breaking that bubble and that self belief of like, I can do this. I just need to commit to myself and take action with whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so pretty interesting, like loop. But I think like really from a client perspective, it's, just like empowering them that like it's just that first step, like where can you break your own bubble, and like us like hyping them up and encouraging them that they can commit to this. And I think like kind of once they get on a roll and they see the results for themselves, it what like starts their journey to keep going,
Yeah.
which has been really cool to see. um so yeah.
I love that. I love when you see and like you feel the momentum picking up. Without naming anyone, can you tell me about a time or an example of somebody that maybe this has happened for that was just like a transformation in motivation and action?
Yeah. um Man, I mean, this is a recent one, and yeah, I won't name any names, but I have a client who has made tremendous progress, and just has a really cool story. I mean, and just really wants to change her life, and it's awesome. And I think, like anyone else, these past few months, like, has had life happen to them, right? Like,
Yeah.
just like things outside of your control, disaster after disaster, right? Roadblock after roadblock, and we sat down last week, and it was like she came to me and was like, I have to take action. Like, if I do not change something right now, like, I'm gonna fall back into my previous ways and like my previous, body. And I don't want that. And like, so that was like empowering to me because I was like, damn, like, she called herself out. Like, she saw herself, like, her action was not aligning, and she wasn't feeling like she's not motivated, right? She's like, I know I need to commit to this, and like I know I need to take action. And it was almost just like awesome. It was like a self-coaching moment. I mean, she's been with me for a long time, so I was like, nice.
Yeah.
But I think that was like just, I mean, sitting down and like calling out your own bullshit. Like, I've been doing this, like, I've been having this happen and I'm tired of it. Like, I'm ready to buckle down and, start seeing results. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, as a coach too, like when you do have a client who has maybe a more substantial amount of weight to lose, um, and that comes to you like that, it's almost like from a healthy perspective, like there's different ways to for them to speed up results. And I'm not talking like in an unsustainable way, but like sometimes like we do want to speed up results so they do get those results, and that's what's going to keep that motivation going. So um yeah, I'm really proud of her, but we kind of just sat down and like tactfully talked about how we want to take action, how she wants to take action. And get those results flowing, and then that motivation will, hopefully come back and the cycle continues. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a part of that too is like, everybody's looking for the secret sauce of like, how do I get myself motivated? Or, okay, I know that motivation is fleeting. So like, how do I get myself to do the thing? Right. But I think something you mentioned earlier actually plays a really big role in that is changing our definition of failure.
Mm,
Of like, I feel like a lot of people avoid starting out of fear of failure,
mm,
avoid taking action out of fear of failure, and they avoid, or they don't even realize that like imperfect action is an option. And so I feel like that is a big part of this, where your client that you mentioned, I know exactly who you're talking about now, and I'm so proud of her too. But I think what she really realized was like, I can't be afraid of failure because like not starting keeps me exactly where I am. So like I need to do something. I need to commit to something. And I think that's where it's like we can come in and break that barrier down of like, it doesn't need to be 7 days at the gym. It doesn't need to be crazy workouts or diets or anything, but like just getting started can build so much momentum. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that
yeah.
failure piece too.
I mean, 100%. I mean, you kind of pointed it out. Like, even if you fail, at least you did something, right?
Yeah.
Like, and not even if you fail, right? Like, but changing that narrative in our head. But like, if you don't take any action, you are at the same exact spot. And I think that's what like our clients and just like people fall into, and like that keeps them stuck and like paralyzed for years of like, how do I get out of this? Like, I just can't figure it out. And I do think that's obviously where coaching comes in, because we help dissect and pinpoint like what's the best course of action to take.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what people get lost into. Like, they come to us, or and they're just like, I'm stuck, and it's like, yeah, like, you're not stuck, but you don't know how to pull yourself out of this, and that's what our job is. So
Yeah. Well, I think more than ever I am of the belief of what's the phrase? It's like you're either growing or you're dying, basically. Which is true though, because like if you're not actively growing and failing forward, taking action, learning from it, moving through that, if you're doing nothing, it might just seem like stagnant. But what's actually happening is the narrative in your head that you can't do things is getting stronger every time that you don't do things, because that's more evidence that you can't do things. So it's like that wolf on your shoulder, that demon that you have in your mind, whatever you want to call it, is getting bigger every time that you wait or you don't act or you don't allow yourself to do something, even if it's not perfect. And so I feel like you said, just those things that you wouldn't normally count, the 5 minute walk, the sip of water, the
yeah,
one fruit or vegetable, like whatever it is, like it's going to actually build proof in the right direction. And you're feeding a cycle no matter which cycle you choose to feed. So I think just recognizing that, like, you're going in one direction or the other, you're never
yeah,
stagnant. There's no such thing as just like, I'll just stay here and like not do anything and be comfortable. Like, you're actively working against yourself if that is the choice that you make. So it's always good to just take like tiny bites off of something, even if you think it's not going to get you anywhere, it definitely will.
yeah, 100%. And I think for like anyone listening, like, maybe like you're not at a point where you want or need coaching, but like, I think tactically it's like, where do you go from here? Like, just like what you were saying, you can start with like 5 minute walk a day, do it for 1 month and
Yeah.
see what happens. Or drink half your body weight in ounces in water like for a month and see what happens. And most of the time you're going to see those results, and that's what's going to encourage that motivation, and will get you hyped to keep going. um,
I love that your time scale for that was a month, because like even that people would be like, what? Like
yeah,
3 days, a week. But really though, like commit to one thing for a month, like that's like monumental. Like when you
yeah,
realize we're talking small habits, we're talking tiny actions, like I don't think people realize how small we're talking and how
yeah,
slow, but
yeah,
it could really add up very quickly.
yeah, 100%. So
Cool.
yeah.
Anything else you want to add on the topic?
Hmm. um Trying to think. Yeah, I guess for anyone listening, like, take a look at your life, like take a look at your week to week, day to day, and like truly ask yourself, like, where can I apply action? Like, where can I take action in my life? And you probably have that like subconscious pool, like, I know I need to do this, or I really want to try this, but I have that fear. And just like take that leap and commit for a month, commit for 2 weeks, whatever it may be. Um, and not only you're going to prove to yourself and like build your self confidence, but you're going to get results from that. And that's just going to help you grow and keep going with your journey. And yeah.
I love that. You know what? It just made me think of this quote that I reposted yesterday on my Instagram story
Yeah.
by Carl. I think it's Carl Jung. He's a psychologist. I remember that from undergrad. It's where your fear is, there is your task.
Yes. I do
Yeah.
remember you posting that. I feel like I kind of subconsciously was like speaking.
Yeah. I planted the seed. I didn't mean to do that, but it's really cool how it came
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I think like our job is to encourage and to motivate, right? Like sometimes
Mhm.
people need that, like, you got this, like, and I'll always be that person for my clients, but also like learning for the rest of your life, like action is going to be the biggest driver and the biggest change. And once you learn to take action despite how you're feeling or how motivated you are, or if it's a good day, it's a bad day, like that's what's going to set you up for success and, you know, the life and body you want to live in.
Yeah, and it's a skill. It's a
Yeah.
skill, right? And so you are taking that skill of making yourself do things when you don't feel like it with you for the rest of your life. And that, I mean, if it wasn't obvious, pays dividends, not only in like a body fat percentage, but like just doing hard shit and being rewarded for it. Because I don't know if these percentages are real at all, because you said like 10% of the time you might be motivated, but I think that's really accurate. And I would say it's probably a fair representation for like most people.
Yeah.
And we always talk about it's about like being 80% consistent. Like what you do 80-90% of the time is who you are, not the other 10-20%. And so if you're
Right.
motivated 10% of the time, like you see the math doesn't work out, right? So I think it's really sharpening that knife, getting that skill stronger so that you can, and it's not about being perfect in the skill either, but like 80% compared to being motivated 10% of the time is a lot of disciplined exercise, and you don't get better at it by not practicing. So
Very true. Yeah.
cool. Well, this was awesome, and I'm glad we were able to keep it short too, because it's nice, like a bite-sized thing that someone can listen to, like right real quick, and just
Yeah.
take some major takeaways. So
Love it.
cool. We will put Abby's Instagram handle and how you can contact her in the description of this podcast episode. But thank you for being here with me, and excited for the people to hear your wisdom. All right. See you on the next one.
All right. Thanks.